UCLA. What was that?
He just mentioned it in his
Yeah,
talk.
so I had a couple. I tied so when I came in as a freshman, I tied Jimmy Connor's record for 22 consecutive victories, and I set the all-time UCLA record for wins in a season that year. That got surpassed a couple years later. But yeah, so I'm still in the record books there for freshman records.
Yeah.
And a couple fun things.
Magic.
Magic.
So Barry, what did Richard Williams do right?
Good.
Well, we talked briefly about this earlier. This is actually quite important. What did Richard Williams do right? I think if he did it has nothing to do with the hardware, forehands, backhands, open stances, all that stuff. Let's just put that over there. I think to be successful at this, and this is kind of one of the things my new mission in life is to try to understand, to set that innate belief in young people that they are going to be, that they are good, that they are going to be successful. You don't necessarily have to tell them they're going to be the best in the world. That might be a little over the top, but he was right. But let's keep it more real. I think part of how we talk to younger, I think one of the things that tennis needs to address here, and I think in all of youth sports in general, we're putting young people. I mean, who plays competitively here? Anybody? It's stressful, right? Let's get real. I mean, tennis is fun. It's it's enjoyable. It's social. It's athletic. It's stressful. Okay. Imagine tennis has got some funny rules. Okay, you go out when you're 11 or 12 years old. You're not allowed to leave your court. You're not allowed to talk to anybody. You're not allowed to be coached, and you have to do this for sometimes 3 or 4 matches in a day, all by yourself. You're 11 years old. Who in their right mind? And then if you have a good day, you got to come back the next day and do it again. Okay. In the meantime, your parents got to sit up there and just grind through this whole thing. They're care. So they're living and dying with every shot. It's just I think that part of it when you're young, you're not able to there's positive stress. You can do. We take tests in school. You get through them. You develop some resiliency and some confidence in yourself. But you cross that line into what we call toxic stress, and you're asking for it. My entire formative years was just an event of toxic stress. Every weekend, it got traumatized by it. So I think what he did so successfully is he it wasn't about wins and losses. It was about developing character, about believing in themselves, and being authentic and being classy and being responsible people at a young age. And then as they became adults, whatever was going to happen on the tennis court was going to happen. But he made sure that those kids, when they got to that successful point, they were ready to support themselves in it. And I think that's one of the challenges for our sport here is when we, the goal here, what are we really doing here is can you hit your last ball and then segue into a healthy adult life? You're going to finish your tennis in your 20s. You got a lot of life ahead of you. You're going to be a family person. You're going to have a career. You're going to be a parent. You have a lot of things the whole point of committing yourself fully to an endeavor like a sport is to commit yourself to something, to be as successful as you can be. So you take that confidence into your next world here, and I think he did really well with that. And they both have multiple interests off the court. They're not, they're not reclusive and shutdowns. Yes.
So you had said, I believe it was at the age of 36 that you finally were being
37.
treated for bipolar, correct?
Yes.
What prompted you to make that move? What was it?
Great story. Okay, so I was struggling terribly with my addiction, and I had gone to the Betty Ford Center in 1999 for another month. This is my second in-stay. And I was trying to find, I was kind of burned out on recovery. I'd been in it a while. I'd had some sobriety for about 3 or 4 years in there, and I lost it. And I was trying, what is going to be the ordering principle of my life? I just can't, AA wasn't enough. I needed something else. And so I decided, I might have been one with you. I think I played one of these little local tournaments in Southern California. I had a really good weekend, and one of my students just joked, you still got it, you should go play the tour. I'm like, no, I'm 36 years old. I'm not going to go play the tour, but I could, but I never got an ATP point. I never got a world ranking because I burned out at 18. I never got a chance to see that through. So I got this cockamamie idea, or it wasn't so cockamamie, to maybe become the oldest person to ever get an ATP point. And it actually had some merits. I was going to kind of reparent myself and do it. I was going to do tennis right. So I got a coaching staff around me and trainers, and I got in great shape, and it was working. And I actually was doing okay. And then I started to struggle a little bit. And I played a tournament. Played Aldrich and Visser in that story, and I served for the match against these guys. He was a former #1 in the world team, and I had a chance to kind of finish the book. That was going to be my book, and I just completely choked. I had a full red out. I was breaking rackets. It was awful. I had a full meltdown. You know, and I went on a terrible bender, and I said, something's wrong. You know, I just couldn't handle losing. So I went to see a friend of mine who I played tennis with. It was a therapist, and he couldn't quite tell me, but he sent me to another therapist who he knew. And within 10 minutes of me telling her story, she just stopped me cold. She was, listen, I'm going to stop there. You're bipolar. So I got diagnosed then, and then I had some friends who I got a second opinion, a third opinion. They all started laughing. Oh yeah, you're kind of the poster child for it. So, so they got me into the mood disorders clinic at UCLA, and then I started the medication carousel there.
And you stopped self-medicating?
Yeah, I stopped. Well, yes and no. Yes,
Okay.
eventually. Yeah. Yes.
I think one of the things that I've always heard is bipolar is genetic, or 60% maybe is genetic, and so I guess I'm kind of, when you're raising high schoolers, like what's a tantrum versus what's a true mood disorder,
Right.
and at some point, kind of to your point, what's the defining factor that finally says, this is what we got? And I appreciate the fact that you said you went to 3 or 4 people, because I think that's another tough spot with mental health right now, is one person that sees
So
you for
it's
15 minutes.
All right, I'll tell you a funny story.
No.
So I ended up at this beautiful new mood disorders clinic at UCLA. It's gorgeous, glass every there. So there's doctors and studies, and they're testing medications, and so they come in, they give me this test, this baseline test to just totally
Just a written test.
just a written test, and
Okay.
so I handed it in. I had gone on a serious bender the week before because I knew I was going to have to be clean up here. So I came in flying on. So I sit down with the doctor, and he looks at the results, and he goes, "You're bipolar 1. You're quite manic." And I go, "Whoa, time out. Where's the blood test? Where's the CAT scan? Let's sit down. Let's break this down a little bit. You're just going to sit there and look at me for 2 minutes and then tell me what I am." He goes, "Well, what do you want? Let's talk a little bit. Tell me about your dad." So I proceeded to tell about my dad. My dad, he used to build computers circuit by circuit, and he just when Haley's Comet came by, he bought a 10-foot telescope and had star charts everywhere. He was totally manic, So I told the doctor this, and he goes, "Yeah, no, this isn't going to be that hard, This is straight from your dad."
So had you been diagnosed, if your dad had known, or anybody had known about your dad, then possibly
He
in high
would-
school
This is tough. See, he wasn't going to come anywhere near. I mean,
Sure.
he couldn't. He drank every day too. He wasn't going to
Right.
about to enter that domain. So yes, certainly the manic depression side of it. My brothers have had serious depression themselves, and acted out. I was more the manic one though. But yes.
What's your relationship with, or was, with your father? Like, did you ever make amends with him? Did you ever have a conversation with
Yeah.
him? Like, did you guys ever get to this place where there was forgiveness?
We had a couple moments. So one of the tougher passages in my book, when my first time in treatment, went to a place called Sierra Tucson, and part of inpatient treatment is family week, and it's a really important part of it. A lot of your family doesn't give you alcoholism, but they can be the source of a lot of the pain that you drink behind, and and it goes both ways. And my father didn't come. My parents didn't come to my treatment. No, and it was tough. I had to address an empty chair, and that was one of the more difficult things. They just wouldn't come. It was too much for them. And in some ways, it was beneficial. And when you're abandoned in that way, you just realize they can't help you. That they could, they would. They loved me, but they just didn't. They couldn't help me. They just didn't know what to do, and it was too much for them. A couple years later, as I was sober, almost 4 years, a little bit over 4 years there, and we had this one, I'd go over for Sunday dinner and we'd talk, and I would talk openly and honestly about recovery and the challenges of it. And my dad was tough, he was like, on a scale of 0 to 100, he said he was a 0 emotionally. He just didn't want to deal with the stuff, he was old school German. But I'll just remember one night I was about 3 years sober, and he after a nice night of conversation, he goes, I just can't believe you're an entirely different person. He goes, I just can't believe how much you've changed.
So he saw that.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
he expressed that to you.
Yeah, but then I relapsed again, and it became just very difficult for them. But in that little window there, he saw that I had changed, and he was able to connect with me at that level.
So was that the point where you felt like you finally got the approval that you've been seeking?
Yeah, again, it's yes, yeah. I don't think I was ever going to trust them again after the treatment center thing. There's a part of me that just died that day. I can't, you guys, I can never trust them. I think after that, it's some part of me. I'd have to do some work to do that, to fully forgive them in my heart for that. But yeah, that was we had some good moments in there. If you it was a boxing round and you had 3 judges, you know, I won some rounds, they won some rounds. As I struggled later, it just got increasingly difficult for them, you know, and I tried to keep them away from it. They didn't even know I was bipolar. You know, they didn't know any of the hospital stays or the, you know, the difficult stuff I had at the end. I just kept them out of the loop on that, and to this day. You know.
Are you teaching children now? Are you working with groups of kids?
In tennis I am, yes.
So is part of working with the kids, are you helping with the parents?
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm
I
sure
do the
your
best I can,
lessons-
yeah.
Everything
It's a challenge. I see, it's tough to get involved with another person's dynamic. So I work mostly with the kids. I try to translate the parental behavior so they understand it and they don't internalize it. And I try to override it with my positivity, and then, you know, I'll just flood the zone with you know, with just excellent, you know, you're with confidence stuff and believe in yourself stuff. But it's tough, you know. I can say 99 great things to them, and then mom looks at them funny, and it's right in the toilet again. So, but it's, you know, so I've just committed to the process. I'm not going to stay out of the results. You know, whatever happens with them is, you know, that's the parents are far more important in their lives than I am. But I'll do what I can.
But I can see even the new teaching, because I played as a young kid and I grew up, you know, very similar kind of thing where, you know, they didn't have the different balls, and now they're really focusing on social emotional development as part of, you know, tennis, which I think is wonderful.
Right. No, and I think that's one of the challenges. You know, and Ian and I can attest to this as older professionals here. You know, we grew up in the tennis boom. We're excellent tennis players, but we're not formal teachers. We never went to teaching school. We're just kind of taking what we learned on. You know, but there's you want to become a teacher at an educational school, you got to go to class. You got to learn how to teach. Now, and this is in a whole other space now. We're trying to understand that some of these kids are having emotional issues and stuff. Can you identify it? Can we identify, you know, and try to prevent these things from getting out of hand, you know, before it becomes too much of a problem, before they start acting out. Yes.
So one of my best friends was actually diagnosed with bipolar disorder last year, and I was wondering if like you had any advice or anything. She's definitely struggling right now.
Yeah. This is where I defer to the professionals. I have enough anecdotal stuff to, you know, as a friend, you have to be careful. You know, they're gonna. I think one of the hardest things for me with my friends when I was really struggling is how they turned their back on me, not because they didn't care about me, but it was too hard. It wasn't safe to love me anymore. You know, I was on a death wish, and they just, I can't get too close to you right now. And only until when I settle down, could we have that conversation. So basically, you know, do what you can, protect yourself, learn what you can. There's a lot to learn out there. They need professional help. I mean, it's nothing to joke around about. And there are medications out there that are, you know, they didn't work great for me because I'm super active, and it's not, you know, sedatives, and you're trying to play tennis. I get hit in the face with the ball a couple of times. I'm like, hey, I'm done with this. I can't talk. You know, I don't feel anything. But I think, yeah, just making sure they get help and be, you know, they need to be consistent. I mean, it's one thing to get medication, and it takes a long time to get diagnosed correctly and dosed correctly, and you have to keep taking them, you know. So just be the best support you can be, and that helps. Yes.
Back on tennis coaching, is it, knowing what you know now, is it possible to create a world-class athlete through extreme positivity?
I think it's
Because, you know, we all learn through consequences, and,
Yeah.
you know, don't do wrong.
right. There'll be enough of that comes just from the brutality of the game. But yeah, I think that's almost, let's put it this way, we've left that space to chance, and that's something I think we're going to be much more hands-on. I just spoke to the incoming president of the USTA, who's also the chief medical officer of the NCAA right now, so he's a mental health guru. So he's coming in, and they're going to be putting stuff in place for this, just really to try to get these kids early on, making sure that it's almost, you're trying to kind of build an immune system, you know, and in many ways we're going to kind of take their vital signs, making sure you're checking up on them constantly about where they're at here. Are you burned out? Are you stressing? Are you feeling excessively anxious? And be able to kind of navigate that with them. I think we're just leaving so much of it to chance and throwing them out there to compete when they're not in a good place. And my experience with this is, if you are not well, if you've got some underlying conditions going on, tennis isn't going to make anything any better. It's just going to make things worse. When you get out, it just triggers all the dysfunction and the discord. So I think it's imperative to have something, you know, in place for these young kids. It's not, it's not determinate, but it's certainly,
I guess when I'm mentally picturing whatever, let's say you got 100 kids, playing tournament tennis and everything, you got 5 out there that are, grew up tough like you did.
yeah.
And they're, they're just grinding out there and they're mentally, they know how to win because they've earned it.
Yeah.
Earned the
No, and there's-
rights to stuff.
So I use this analogy, if you don't just let everybody go drive a car, okay? You wanna go drive a car, you gotta get a license, you gotta study for your test, okay? And even then, some people are gonna go right out there and crash the car right out of the driveway. But some of them are gonna go on to be NASCAR drivers. You just don't know how this is gonna play out. So I think more importantly than anything else, we've gotta make sure that some kids handle that kind of stress real well and they emerge from it stronger than ever. And some kids don't handle it so well. So we have to kind of constantly reevaluate our goals. What are our goals here? Are we trying to just produce a champion at the expense of everything else? So there's a balance here that we're trying to figure out. Yes.
Thank you for sharing your story and for being so transparent and authentic.
Thank you.
I'm wondering when you're having a low point or a low day and you're depressed, what is your North Star? What are the things that you personally do to get you through that day?
I listen to my wife. So my nature will be to, when I'm down or I'm troughing a little bit, will be to isolate and to not want to do anything, and she's a go-go-goer, so it's a good balance. But I don't take any medication today, and that's important for me to say, and that's strictly my way of doing this. It doesn't work well for me, but I am extremely vigilant about my way of life, and my floor and my ceiling are set. I sleep religiously, I nap religiously. I am very, very careful about how much energy I expend and how much emotion I expend. I was joking, I won't play anymore. I'm not going to compete again. It's just going to create a whole bunch of frazzle in my head. I don't want to feel. I don't need to feel that way anymore. There's a certain frequency that I'm on now. That.
So you don't believe that bipolar disease is an organic psychological disease?
No,
Because if
no.
it's organic and there's therapeutic meds for it, and you don't take them, it's like saying, well, I have high blood pressure, but I'm going to control it because I'm going to will it to be better.
Right. And I
It's
preface.
just not.
Well, I disagree with that. Yeah, I've taken all the medications numerous times. I mean, there was not an easy thing for me to. I would love nothing more than be able to take a pill and have my range. Okay, but my job and my life, the Zyprexes and the Seroquels and the anti-mania, the things that are good, they kill me. They flatline me, and it was too much. I can't function that way. I have to be a tennis professional by trade. I've got to be out there and enthusiastic and present. So those things they're not made for people who are active like us. I'm just going to be honest with you. I tried all of them numerous times. But it is behavioral at the end of the day. You've got to be able to monitor your behavior. And if you're not watching, listen, I'll give you an example. I'm a hippie. When Fish announces their tour, my head immediately goes, let's go for a week. I'm good, I'm going. Okay? But that's my manic side. It just wants to go and feel a certain elevated way for extended stretches and get my mania on. Okay, I know it. But I have to walk it back. Say, no, I can't do that anymore. Maybe I'll just watch this one from the couch. Okay, so I'm very careful, and I know, as I said, this is my way of doing it. I'm not making suggestions for anybody else. This is something I found that's working for me for over a decade now, and I'm going to stay with it. Yes, Tim.
So I asked you the other night why Serena, why they were successful.
Yes.
How did that dad do that? And I'd love to answer. He built him up.
Built him up.
emotionally.
Yeah.
I want you to tell that, because
Yeah.
I think you have been all night, but you really told it with those girls and what that dad did.
Yeah, he started from a very early age and just said, you are the best, you're gonna be the best, but at the same time made them accountable. It wasn't just delusional. He was, he made them do their work and do their studies and learn their languages and so forth. But, yeah. Yes.
I'm a bit interested. So coming from a family history, my mother committed suicide, finally third attempt when she was 57, and my firstborn daughter was 7 weeks. I have a bipolar aunt. I was diagnosed and told there was 84 different variations of bipolar. I'm extremely different from my aunt, who has the typical one, the extreme highs to the extreme lows, doesn't leave the house, for months on end and then is so manic, but she messes with her meds and the salts and so forth. But medication has been literally a lifesaver for me. And like you, I bounced around and had horrible experiences. You know, you try one, you gain 13 pounds, now you're really depressed.
That's the first
Or even better, you're fat and you can't have an orgasm. Oh my God, now you want to kill yourself. But truly for me, if I am, and I have tried many times, and he hates that I have to be on medication and that he can't fix me by just being happy with diet and exercise. But hello, my mother's dead. And so for me, that is my thing. But the thing that she mentioned is that hereditary. My doctor believes, and this was years ago when I was diagnosed, but that there's 84 different variants of bipolar, and identical twin siblings can have a different bipolar. So what are your thoughts on that? Because classically people think bipolar, you're on the salts and whatever.
No. Listen, obviously there are extreme cases. There are hypomania where it's much more mild and your range is much more noticeable. I was a flyer. I was way more manic than mental.
And mania feels great. Trust me, the mania is amazing. It's
a
the
game
drop
changer.
that
You know,
kills
I
you.
don't know. I mean, I went through the whole carousel for a solid 3 years, and I just didn't really, and I'm not going to blame it. Everyone's trying their best. It just wasn't
Right.
working. It just didn't work for me. I actually had an interesting experience. I was on Depakote, and I was having some success. I actually had about a 6-7 month run there where I felt super. And then I started getting bloated. I just started taking on water, and it was spectacular. I put on like 25-30 pounds of water. I thought I was having, I went down to the ER.
I gained
What
13
is
pounds
going
in 2
on?
weeks. That's great.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. And so finally my doctor, we did a test on the medication. He took me off it, and I cleaned right out. I was like, oh God, this was actually
I'd
working
love to
for
get
me.
that point of medication done. Yeah, but
So it's complicated. Again, I'm not.
Everybody's different,
Yeah, I'm not a
and-
doctor. I just basically found what's working.
But I
for
play one on
myself.
TV.
There you go. Yes.
I wanted to ask you, as a professional, your job is to coach kids. And as a professional, you're a tennis player, so you get to coach the tennis, but you probably also see and identify these kids, but you're not qualified to be the diagnosis, even though you see it and it's
Yes.
obvious in you.
Yeah.
How do you navigate that conversation with not only the kid, but the parent to hopefully help them
Yeah.
Right.
get the help that they, or at least get them in the direction that they need to go, because I know it's a fine balance, you're not allowed to do something.
I will say
How do you get there?
yeah, it's tricky. So this has blown up in my face a few times on addiction stuff, where I knew I had some players that were, they were coming to me. They were 15, 16 years old, just explaining these party nights that they had, and blacking out and leaving a shirt there, and he was just constantly telling me these stories, that he was just going,
You were a safe place.
Yeah, because he in his weirdo teenager world, he thought that would impress me because I was in recovery. So I'm sitting there listening to it patiently, and I try to have an open line of communication with them. At some point, I got to, I can't responsibility. I got to talk to his parents. Like, there's something's wrong here. So of course I talk to the mom. I go, this is difficult. I need to confide in you about something about Greg and what he's been doing. And she goes, no, he's been here at 11 o'clock at night. We have, we talk every night when he comes home. So I'm like, oh my God, okay, so he's just making all this stuff up. So which is another problem in and of itself.
Wow.
So
Wow.
and eventually that, the fact that I broke his trust, and that it just turned into a mess. Yeah.
But is there a safe place for you to navigate that not only says, I know there's something going on here, I know you need to address I know you need to go this direction, I'm not the professional, but
When I sense there's an issue, I do go to the parents and I say, listen, I have a lot of experience in this space, and what do you want me to do? Do you want me to? It could be zero tolerance. If I sense anything's going on, if they show up high for a lesson, do you want me to tell you, or do you want me to try to talk to them and develop an open line of communication? Because it may not be safe for them to talk to. So you never know. So I've done the best I can there. It's been, fortunately, where I'm at now, it's been this generation of kids I'm working with are much milder than say 15, 20 years ago when I was a little bit of crazier kids. The kids today are a little
better at hiding it.
Well, maybe no. Actually, I have a weird theory on this. I think our parents gave us a lot of rope, And I think our generation gave us a lot of rope, and they know what we did with that free time, so they're absolutely making sure that their kids aren't gonna have that much rope anymore. So there is a little, the helicopter, there's some sensibility behind this. Yes?
Well,
We can track them on their phones,
great
right?
question, so that's what I
Nice.
just wanted to ask, and to touch on that,
Which is
was
good.
to move forward is, what, you said you were looking at working with the wellness program.
Yes.
So, because you get put in as you mentioned, an awkward position, because even the student that you talked about obviously had some kind of issue that he was making something up of such extremes, right? So, what do you foresee the wellness program initially? Because it'll always be an evolving program, but to be able to move the children or the youth towards that wellness program, rather than having to rely on going to the parents.
Right.
It's because the parent can be just as much of the problem as you
Oh, no,
mentioned.
absolutely.
More problem, a lot of times.
I don't have,
I mean, honestly,
I don't have a relationship with my mother because of her bipolar. I mean, her relationship with Jim Beam, Jack Daniels, I mean, she has great date nights, right? And my brother inherited it. I'm blessed that I didn't, but I see a lot of that, and I wonder how, if you had that in place, and how do you foresee that happening? Where you could move that transition from that?
Right. So I think that's part of, we have a gal that I grew up playing tennis with, you might remember Sean Foltz, remember her? Yeah, she's a doctor now, she's Dr. MS, and she's working with USDA. So we're trying to work out a program to kind of an intake interviews with these kids, kind of identify the possible, especially the coaches and the staffings down there that see these kids. They know the ones that are a little bit having some issues either at home or with themselves. And I'm just going to be another resource for them, someone who has lived through this,
So you can kind of guide them to the
yeah,
program.
I mean, exactly. And I think, right, especially when they're young like this, because it's not easy to, what is teenage behavior and when is being moody cross the line into a mood disorder. It's complicated. We all have moods, so it's not that simple. So, but just being able to, my goal, particularly in the tennis side of things, is to help get these kids the most out of their careers, stay healthy, to be able to see it through, improve their perspective, their mindfulness, and all that part of it, and just get a good sense of self, a good sense of wellness about themselves. And and on kind of a cautionary tale of my story, what can happen if these things are not addressed. My story is severe in many ways, but at the same time, there are a lot of other kids who, if this stuff goes unaddressed, it doesn't, there's no switch to flip on this.
Well, it becomes a hard issue because the kids are underage.
Right. It's super hard.
You're referring them to a counselor.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yes, and the parents are part of the problem.
This is already the two conversations I've had with them already. This has all come up already, and it's been an issue for them. They have a on-site sports psychologist down there, and and just just getting the kids to there and having some parental resistance to that when they're minors. It's not a simple segue. So. Yes.
I had a tennis question. So,
Yes.
And you might have addressed this earlier. I'm sorry if you did. I came in a little bit late, but do you have like a good tennis story about some great tennis you played and some sort of thing that happened that you might want to pass along to us while we're here? I mean,
Well, I beat Pete Sampras at a wedding reception.
I gotta ask you, but
Did you?
Did you ever play Ian directly?
I did, a couple times.
And did you beat him?
We had good matches, yeah.
And what's his weak spot and where's his button?
It was 30 years and pounds ago. Well, I mean, it's funny to make fun of the stuff now, but I did get asked to play at a wedding reception exhibition against Pete Sampras right when he was coming up, and it was like, and I had done an all-nighter the night before, and I was in bad shape when I got up there, and it was a doubles match, and Pete was just coming on. He hadn't won the U.S. Open yet, but he was making some moves. So we ended up beating him in that night. So we were getting our check, and of course I immediately ordered a double Jack and Coke and smoking a cigarette. And he just looks at me, he goes, "You're a psycho."
And did you say thank you?
And I said, a couple years later, he was proved correct.
Say that.
Fortune teller.
Yes.
I just wanna say thanks, cause I know your stories about tennis, but I think, that obviously it can go across the board with, you know, high school kids in every sport, you know, even academics, whatever that is, and that the more people, you and your lovely wife, you know, to put faces on to some of the things that all of us at times have family members, but there's some stigmas associated, and that people see you can have wonderful lives once you got, you know, these things, control, I don't know what the right word is, but as you said, some
You can get
medication
there
for
from
some,
here.
you can get there from here, yes.
Exactly,
It's got
and with
wonderful
that, the books
productive
I
lives.
mean,
Yeah.
get
Thank you very
that
much.
from here. Yay.